Hey, listener. Want to help us out? Leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or hit that like button on YouTube. Only takes a second on your end and really helps us out on ours. Otherwise, enjoy the show. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine. Oh man, if you press play, you're missing out on 27 minutes of an extra discussion. This discussion is on something that I'm sure you, as a person listening on a podcast, and therefore an internet person, have observed, which is kind of the review mob mentality, but not to give 0 out of 10s, but to give 10 out of 10s. And as a movie podcast hosted by Christians, you're also, as a listener, likely to know about the experience of a bad Christian movie coming out, but then it's getting glazing reviews of 10 out of 10s like that on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes. And we're starting to see that again with, earlier this year, Melania documentary, the most expensive documentary produced by Amazon Prime, as what people are calling an indirect bribe to the president, came out into theaters. Critics do not like it. The 53 that rated it on Rotten Tomatoes, which is very small, said 11%. That's the aggregate score. The popcorn meter says 93%, and that's out of 1,000 some odd reviews. And this sort of thing happens all the time. Sound of Freedom, same deal. Critics were pretty much mid on it. Most people didn't like it in terms of like quality, but then you would see that online people were glazing it and it was getting 10 out of 10s. And this keeps going on and on. God's Not Dead as well, further back, so on and so forth. I find that interesting, that this is kind of a jersey wearing thing where it's like, oh, well, the team has a new game. Let's all put our jerseys on and go on out. So we spent some time talking about that and about kind of this, like, as Catherine put it, a fandom mentality where you kind of have people who, like, it's in their demographic, it's in their thing to do, so they stand up for it. We talk about, are people doing this out of morality? Is it because if I am Christian that I have to do this? Like, this is how I support. 27 minutes of that discussion available for Patreon supporters. If you go on patreon.com/cinematic doctrine and you choose $3 a month, you gain access to that discussion as well as many other discussions and other digital perks. Patreon.com/cinematic doctrine. Check that out. Link in the show notes. You did not press play, though, to hear me pitch all of this stuff. You press play to hear us talk about, to do a movie discussion on the film Misericordia. Misericordia was actually submitted and selected by Patreon supporters. When you are on Patreon and you choose to join at the $3 tier, you gain access to being able to submit movies you want us to talk about, and then you vote on those, and then we talk about them. Misericordia won, so here we are. Movie discussions are simple. We're going to do two prompts that are non-spoiler specific, so if you don't know what the movie is, we'll explain the premise. We'll talk about it freely without any spoilers. You'll be able to just learn about it. And then the second half, we'll get into 2 prompts that are more spoiler specific to let us talk about everything else going on in the film. I'm joined by Kat, though. Hi, Kat. What's up?
Hey. Honestly, hearing you do the little pitch just made me think of how I appreciate with the Patreon picks that they suggest movies that otherwise we would not watch. Because I think this would just never be something that like really came up on my radar. So always very interesting and always cool to check out something that someone else is interested in, someone thought was worth it to, recommend.
Yeah, one of the things I've enjoyed even too, like I mentioned this, I think a couple episodes ago, specifically it was because it was a movie where me and whoever I did it with, did not like the movie. And I started by saying, like, it's interesting to get submissions because, like, I don't know if people are saying I want Cinematic Doctrine to talk about it because I bet they'll hate it and they'll tear it apart, or I want them to talk about it because I am really excited to hear what my favorite critics say about a movie I love, and then it turns out I do not like it. I don't know. But it is cool that over the last 2 years, we've gotten such a interesting mix of all kinds of movies. And every now and then, like, something comes up that's like one that maybe we already wanted to watch, but now we have a reason to, or one we've never heard of, kind of like this one. And so, yeah, it is like a neat little, I don't know, exercise in the podcast.
And I mean, I would say specifically with this movie too, it's like, don't worry, guys, you can recommend movies with subtitles. We can handle it.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, Pulse was one that was recommended actually, and won the Patreon pick that one year. So that was a great one. That was a good one to talk about. So let me give a little bit of background for Misericordia before we get into our discussion here. So Misericordia, this is oh man, I'm going to get this name so wrong. I'm going to get this so wrong. Writer-director Alain Girardi, I believe is his name. He's directed films like Stranger by the Lake, That Old Dream That Moves, and then Misericordia is his most recent movie, it seems. And the premise is essentially that Jeremy, our main character, is returning home to this place called Saint Marshall, which is where his late boss used to be. And his late boss has actually passed away, so Jeremy's there for the funeral. And while he's there, he's rooming with his late boss's widow, Martine, and he kind of becomes entangled, as the IMDb writes, that's the word they use, in kind of the relationships and the drama within this small town. So we have like this beautiful setting of just wonderful, full, tall forests. I believe there were like mountains and hills, and there's just like this old architecture that has been remodeled to at least have modern accommodations and technology. And it's really a vibe movie. Like, I know that that's kind of a kitschy thing to say nowadays, but the vibe feels really good to kind of settle into as Jeremy kind of just well, you might disagree, but
no. I mean, you're saying this is a fall baby. This is a fall foliage film, my friends.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if it was fall. Was it fall in the setting? I know a character mentions the season.
Yes, it's fall. Yeah,
it is a very cozy setting type movie. Jeremy pretty much only drives at the start of the movie and maybe one other time. All the other times where he goes to meet characters, he is walking, and we just kind of get these wide shots of him walking, and they're just stunning. At one time, you commented, just like, I can smell that shot. Like, it just smells wonderful. It just looks so good. Amidst all of this, though, and I think fans of this director will be familiar with this and find it a little head scratching that a movie podcast hosted by Christians are talking about it. Alain Girardi is known for directing like kind of drama eroticas, and this movie, it has erotica tones in it. Nobody has sex. Nobody sleeps with anybody. And I saw on Letterboxd that there was a person at a Q&A and had asked kind of one of the reasons why they went about making the film, and he had answered, he wanted people to be watching thinking like, who's going to sleep with who? But in reality, just like real life, nobody sleeps with anybody. And so I thought that was particularly funny. But that kind of adds to like the way that the movie feels. There's some tension between these characters about like, what are the relationships here? Because some of them are violent, but some of them seem touchy, and some of them seem intimate, but some of them seem heavy and weighted. I realize I'm not really giving plot specifics, but it really is as simple as Jeremy arrives to this small town where his old boss had died, and he's getting entangled with the relationships of the people in there. And that's the movie. Like, that's really where it goes. It's all conversations. There's some good dark humor. I think the movie has a extremely clever thread to it that just makes it, like, you and I were just chuckling at moments that I think were like well constructed and performed. But I digress. I'm starting to get into what did I think of the movie. Let's kick it off with you. What did you think of Misericordia?
So, I mean, knowing next to nothing going into the film, I think I expected on the outset something that was going to be more mysterious. I, for one, enjoy a good mystery. And this movie is definitely a drama, but it's super front-facing with how the complicated incident unfolds, and pretty clear about which parties are at play in the incident and how they interact with each other. So, yeah, that description where it mentions like, oh, he becomes entangled with these people. It's like, yeah, like that's what happens. But also, when you actually see how the entanglement happens, you're like, oh, I guess for me, there wasn't really much of a thread to pull at with the mystery. And we'll get into more in the spoiler specific section. But on top of that, you know, like you had said, the like the setting of the movie is just absolutely breathtaking.
It's beautiful.
It's the
so
French
pretty.
countryside in fall, and like people are just walking in the fall air. They're picking mushrooms. They're drinking way too much wine. Like,
yes. Yeah.
and I know I'm making it sound like it's some sort of Hallmark movie, which it definitely is not.
No.
However, like I do appreciate the setting, and I guess to kind of cap off my thoughts with what I thought about the movie, these characters really felt like real people, nuanced but also easy to understand. So I mean, like all of us, we have our things that make us complicated and unique, and also like at the end of the day, like most of us just really enjoy our creature comforts of a nice full tummy and a good night's sleep. There are some flowery lines of dialogue throughout the film that kind of stand out, but it felt pretty grounded to me. And I mean, I guess my one critique is that some moments do feel over the top. Like you said, there are like these dark comedy moments, but then there are also scenes where characters are either like in physical conflict with one another or put in precarious situations. And just to be specific about it, there are those heavy overtones of like desire and sexuality. And some of the moments seem almost cartoonish in how that situational awkwardness plays out.
Yes.
So I don't think that's 100% my cup of tea. But yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what your initial thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I briefly mentioned that, like, it's cozy and kind of like, and I say this as a positive, like it's kind of a lazily paced movie. It's just not in a rush. And I say that knowing that it's also not a long movie. It's like an hour, 40 minutes. Like that's not bad. So it's well paced for kind of going at this slow pace. It also just like very clearly, like you said, the characters are realized. They are realized the second the movie starts. It feels like you have to catch up when the movie starts. And I would say about 20 minutes in, I'm like, okay, I kind of understand. This is a film about like not a stranger, but essentially a stranger coming into town and messing everything up. Is kind of a Promethean form of this film. That's like the source code that kind of is beneath the layer of it all. And but it is just so stunning to watch. It's well filmed. It feels like an impressionist painting. The color grading is so good, and it's just competent cinematography. So like, man, you know the film is moving at its own pace, but like to me, like I was like, take your time. Like this is a beautiful image. I don't want to cut away. And then also, I was not expecting this, but it has a dash of like what I would just call grotesqueness. And I kind of like that was in the movie. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. There's just these moments that are, yeah, like they're just comparatively loud to the rest of the material, where they're just these standout moments that, like, I mean, even Catherine just like gasped like audibly when something happened, and then the two of us are like, yeah, it's just all that stuff worked for me. Like I thought those were good, like I would say like these heightened momentary climaxes, and they really work for me. So all in all, like I didn't step away with the movie like loving it. I didn't step away with it going, yeah, I'm going to watch more of this director's work. But I did, from it, watching this reminded me of why I like films like this that are much more what people would call art than some other material that exists out there, or other material we've talked about on the podcast, where it's just a very confidently made film about people. And I liked that. There's nothing magical going on. There's nothing crazy going on. Like it's just people's lives. And then you just put a camera and caught it on tape.
Hey, don't forget, there's a lot of fun content missing from this episode because you're not listening on Patreon. Head over to patreon.com/cinematic doctrine and support for $3 a month to gain access to uncut episodes with upwards of 40 minutes of bonus content each. You'll thank me later.
What did the movie evoke in you?
Yeah, so I mean, for all the positives that I've kind of mentioned, here in the last few minutes, I also just got to be honest, like, I don't think this is my kind of movie. again, I appreciate a good drama, but I don't think I could see myself returning to this or even really recommending it to others. It would be a very specific type of person. And even then,
Yes.
even then I'm like, nah, like not really. Again, the technical execution of the film is really like to be appreciated, but the story just isn't something that I resonated with. I feel like there's this double whammy that happened where the sexual situational awkwardness, and mind you, nobody sleeps together, but like the tension, the desire,
The yearning.
on top of the way that there wasn't necessarily like a mystery at a certain point because of how early the situation starts to unfold, was really just a double whammy for me. To kind of dig into that, the way that intimacy is used like a bargaining chip between characters in Misericordia bothers me. And we'll get into that more with the spoiler section. But there was like this casualness and high focus on like the sexual attraction between characters. It's a little upsetting because it's so transactional and casual. And then also it's a little boring to me. Like adding that type of desire and yearning tilt to so many of the relationships just felt kind of reductive to me, where like there could have been these complex relationships with like platonic or familial or brotherly desire, love, attraction, and it all just kind of turns the direction of sex. And so to me, like I'm kind of left wondering, like, is the love expressed between characters like a pure type of love or like a pure type of mercy? Because Misericordia translates to like a type of mercy or forgiveness, or like, are we seeing that between these characters, or are we seeing like this type of manipulation of love through the desire and the intimacy? That's kind of the first half of it that really threw me off my feet. And then the complicating incident was the thing that made me gasp when it happened. Once it happens, again, it's not much of a mystery. It becomes more about watching people hide things. It can be interesting to engage with a story like that from time to time, but it's not really a story that I regularly engage with because I don't enjoy spending time with characters that have things to hide or characters who are just morally dubious most of the time. But yeah, like I think the next thing I watch has to have like some sort of lovable goofball character.
Ash Williams.
I can't take something so serious, at least not to this level. So
for me, what it evoked, well, like primarily I just thought to myself, like, here we are talking about a director who largely makes erotica and also like queer cinema stuff. And like I do not personally watch queer cinema, primarily because a decent amount of what falls under queer cinema is specifically about sexuality. And I don't particularly enjoy watching movies about sex. I like movies about love. And I have said on the podcast before that like there has to be a way for film as a medium to talk about sexuality if it is going to talk about humanity, because sex has been a part of humanity since the existence of humans forever. So there has to be a way to talk about it. Oftentimes, like I just don't dive into it because that's just how I am. That's not my preferences. That said, whenever I have watched anything that I would say is like queer under or overtones, they've always evoked a real sense of melancholy, because Jeremy is definitely bisexual. He swings both ways, and he is unsuccessful in everything he does.
He swings and misses.
Yeah, every time. And there's something like kind of sad about it, because it's also like he also wants to have some kind of relational interaction with these people. The film isn't deep enough to talk about like the differences of platonic relationships versus romantic sexual relationships, but that melancholy stuff is still kind of here. I don't like the idea of converting movies into either like a homework or a way of learning about things, but I'm sure that if I tuned into some queer cinema here and there, like a Paris is Burning or Moonlight, like I could at the very least learn more about an entire culture and community I'm not a part of. I think that only makes sense, especially like, again, as a movie podcast hosted by Christians. I think sometimes even just the fact that I'm saying I would be comfortable watching Paris is Burning or Moonlight, like people are probably like going crazy, but I don't know how else you can be like Christ and live in a culture and community and understand it and talk about it without having knowledge of it. And so when I find that like certain movies have been considered within those communities useful, that's worthwhile. I think that's why if you watch Donnie Darko, you'll understand your kids better because Donnie Darko seems to connect with every teenager that ever watches it. And so, so I digress. I like the melancholy. I could be convinced that maybe check out some other flicks of this kind. But right now, I'm still on my horror binge, my foreign horror binge, my J horror binge. So that's where I'm kind of at with that. Any last things you want to mention before we go into spoilers?
No, I think everything else is, safe for spoiler territory.
Sheriff, we got a lot to talk about.
Welcome to Twin Peaks. I'm your Twin Peaks veteran, Special Agent Matt Hanna.
And I'm your first-time viewer, Sheriff Hannah.
And each week, we're visiting David Lynch and Mark Frost's Twin Peaks on our new show, Welcome to Twin Peaks, a Twin Peaks rewatch podcast.
Entering the town of Twin Peaks.
We're talking dreams, damn fine coffee.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
Back we're talking mysteries.
And asking the important questions like, who really killed Laura Palmer? Are the owls what they seem? And why does this town feel like a nightmare you don't want to wake up from?
It is happening again.
Whether you're a longtime Twin Peaks resident or stepping into the Black Lodge for the very first time, Welcome to Twin Peaks is your guide through the woods.
What kind of fantastic trees have you got growing around here?
New episodes every week wherever you get podcasts.
And be sure to follow our socials at Welcome to Twin Peaks Podcast for schedules and opportunities to call and write into the show.
I'm gonna turn it upside down!
The mysteries are dense and the secrets are dark.
We'll see you in Twin Peaks with a fresh cup of coffee.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's okay. Like it's a decent one. It's very pretty. It's got some good comedy to it, and I think it's pretty engaging. Check your content guide. There is some nudity, but infrequent and momentary, and largely played as like comedy. But yeah, so let's get into spoilers. Recurring motifs and prominent significant moments and or characters. What do you have, Kitty Cat?
Okay, so I have one thing that kind of has other things growing out of it. I will start the section by saying, for people who have seen the movie or who do not care that it is being spoiled, the complicating incident is when Jeremy goes back to town, his childhood friend Vincent, Martine's son, and him get in an altercation, and Jeremy kills Vincent. Mm-hmm. The whole rest of the movie is watching Jeremy then bury the body, make excuses, lie to Vincent's mom, lie to Vincent's wife, lie to the priest, lie to the cops.
Yeah, he's just missing.
Eventually, fess up to the priest. And in there, he tries to sleep with people a couple of times and does not succeed.
Very silly.
So, really, I would say, the thing that the movie is pinned on is Vincent's death. And a recurring motif that comes up throughout the film, even before Vincent passes away, is that Jeremy is enjoying foraging for mushrooms. And so he'll go out to forage for mushrooms, and Vincent says he's going to work, but really he's going out to the woods to find Jeremy to try and mess with him and fight with him. And sometimes the priest is also out there looking for mushrooms. The mushrooms are a motif early on. Once Vincent dies and is buried, Jeremy realizes that there are morel mushrooms growing in Vincent's shallow grave on the outskirts of town. And the thing that I think is significant with the mushrooms for me is I started thinking of the Eucharist, where Christ says, here's this bread, it's my body broken for you. Here's this wine, this is my blood shed for you. And in some weird, messed up way, I thought Vincent's body is preparing these mushrooms for Jeremy. It's not bread, it's not wine, but it's a body. Like literally providing the mushrooms. Something else kind of significant in the mushrooms that I saw was people in the film mention it's fall. Porcini mushrooms are normally growing. And it's really surprising to the priest that he sees morel mushrooms are now growing in the forest, which should only be growing really in the spring. So thinking of morels particularly, it's a type of mushroom that ought to be growing during spring, which would be, in some small way, a season that represents new life. So I don't know if I'm thinking too hard about it, but in the mushrooms, I'm seeing this imagery of this body preparing things for Jeremy, this new life that's rising up from the things that are dead. And it's way more sinister than the flowery words I'm using to describe it now, because Jeremy is just essentially taking on Vincent's life. First by winning like his mom's affection, then trying to win the affection of Vincent's friend Walter, and then finally, in a way, receiving protection and receiving the approval of the priest in the town. Once the priest discovers the mystery's out, the cat's out of the bag, Vincent's dead, and the priest is pretty sure Jeremy did it. So to me, again, it's very sinister the way in which he is taking on this man's life. And Vincent from the get-go has kind of hated Jeremy and thought that he was just there to sleep with his mom, who's this grieving widow. And I'm honestly, as I'm watching the film, I'm like, wait a minute, was Vincent actually right about Jeremy being this antagonistic force? Like someone who's just there to take advantage of his widowed mom. He's there to like parasitically take over things from people, or like, because we hear that Jeremy has been living out of town for the past 10 years and he was a baker, but now he's been unemployed for 3 or 4 months. So like, this is someone who like really, in my perspective, I feel like he's like starting to take advantage of things. He's starting to do these things. And again, I'm left there thinking like, Vincent, like, was he right to be like, Jeremy, get out of town? Or is Jeremy just living now, having had this altercation with Vincent and killing him in the heat of the moment? Is Jeremy now just living out these unfortunate consequences of the action that he took, which was killing Vincent? So I feel like I've said a lot there, but those are my disentangled thoughts about the mushrooms to start off with.
Yeah, I mean that was like the bulk of what I had was mushrooms. Also, like I feel like to go a little classes in session here. Like I wanted to like better understand perhaps what is being used here with mushrooms as like a recurrent image. Mushrooms propagate by spores, and their mycelium, the actual organism that makes up fungi, exists largely underground. Mushrooms prop up exceedingly fast. One day they aren't there, and then the next day they are there. It's just like that. Mushrooms look like plants, but aren't made of cellulose. Rather, they're chitin, which is similar to the carapace of a bug, actually. Mushrooms don't eat, nor do they photosynthesize. They don't like consume through a mouth. They actually just absorb things through their like surface area. So there's a lot of like aspects to them that just make them different than other kinds of living. Mushrooms exist as like this external evidence of something more, specifically things unseen or uniquely so in some cases. So for instance, mushrooms sprout from spores, not from seeds. Seeds are multicellular. They're compact with everything a plant needs to grow. They germinate sexually and then eventually grow and blossom. But for the most part, seeds are pretty independent. Like they have a lot of what they need. They can sprout. And then by the time they've turned into a sprout, that's when it kind of becomes more dependent on what's around it. Spores, though, they're just single cells. Like although a mushroom can produce quite literally billions of spores, these spores are all singular. They don't always require sexual reproduction. They can just be cast out and they'll just be there. They just remain dormant for a very long time. Sometimes years, sometimes decades. They just sit and wait. Spores are also microscopic as opposed to seeds, which are multicellular and visible. And so they really are things you cannot see. And then when a mushroom appears, It's like, oh, there is all this stuff that happened before the existence of this, and that mushroom is evidence of stuff. So for me, Jeremy is a spore coming into town, and then the movie is his life as a mushroom. Jeremy arrives into town for a funeral. Spores remain dormant until the time is right. Moisture, nutrients, warmth. Dead bodies provide all three, which is why the film starts with a funeral. Jeremy, funnily enough, doesn't have sex with anyone to his chagrin. Not all mushrooms produce sexually. Many are asexual. So there's that. Jeremy has much under the surface. He can't always hide his feelings. Although a mushroom may look like the fungi itself, really the fungi is the network that the mushroom is connected to. The mushroom is just evidence of the fungi that is all underneath. The fungi being the mycelium that is connected like a nervous system,
like a web
underground. It's like a web. And so the mushroom is actually really just the mushroom is really just we are ready to propagate again and to send out spores. So here's Jeremy coming into town, ready to spread his seed, but nobody will receive it. Rejected by everybody. When you talked about mushrooms, like you kind of landed more on the Vincent side. I kind of landed more on the Jeremy side.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, what's interesting is I did have a secondary thought here where, I mean, of course, I'm thinking of how Vincent is like this catalyst for the mushrooms. And again, to kind of go back just to close the thoughts on like the Eucharist thing, at some point, the priest finds where the mushrooms are sprouting. He takes them, he harvests them, he brings them to Vincent's mom and Jeremy, who is staying with Vincent's mom, and says, hey, look, I brought you something for dinner. And like Jeremy is forced to eat these mushrooms that are coming out of Vincent's body.
Yes.
To try and keep his cover. And the priest still figures it out. The priest is still like, no, you sweat way too much at that dinner table. You are the one who killed him. I know where he is, and you killed him. Anyway, I also had a similar thought where mushrooms grow from the remains of dead things. Yeah. And so, like, really, would Jeremy have been able to grow into his new life in Saint Martial without the death of Vincent? Like a mushroom, he's thriving only through the relational nutrition and the space and the environment that is there as Vincent's rotting away. Like, he is literally staying in Vincent's childhood bedroom.
He tried to I mean, who knows what his intentions were ultimately, but he almost tried to take the place of Vincent's dad, to the point that Vincent's like, I can't stand this. He's even wearing my dad's clothes.
Get out of here.
But then, he kind of, takes the place of Vincent eventually, and so on and so forth. It's very strange.
And like, weirdly, he is also still trying to take the place of Vincent's dad. Because I mean, like the mindful, like the thing so here funny. Too. And I don't understand if this was like a familial love sort of thing or like a desire sort of thing. Jeremy is staring at the photo album with Martine, the widow, and looking at a picture of the deceased husband and dad. And she just looks at him and goes, you still love him, don't you? And you never told him that you loved him. And I'm like, so Jeremy was also like attracted to Vincent's dad and his mom and Vincent's best friend. Like,
it's crazy.
what is happening here? So again, and I don't know translation wise, like, okay, was this a different type of love than like a romantic love, right? So I could be misrepresenting it. However, it is just the whole reason when Jeremy comes into town is because he was the dad's apprentice in the bakery. And so like he's planning to potentially open up the bakery, stay with Vincent's mom as long as he possibly can. Yeah. And like all these things are just kind of, there are enough things in the beginning of the film where I am kind of left thinking like, was Jeremy always kind of like thinking in this way of like, I will go back and I will assimilate into this? And was it purposeful or accidental that he now ends up in Vincent's place? But I think it's super telling when the priest asks for Jeremy's honest opinion, and he says, so like, Jeremy, if you were to go to prison for life, if you were to receive the death sentence and that would bring back Vincent, would you do it? And Jeremy said, no. Like, he is willing to live with like this burden on his conscience for his entire life and find ways to justify his actions and to continue to grow out of the remains of like these two dead men and their lives. It all just feels a little icky but
It's so twisted.
that is my opinion. That is my opinion.
You may not know this, but the easiest way you can show your support for Cinematic Doctrine is to rate and review the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. So press pause and share your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And then press play again so you can hear the rest of the show.
We've talked a lot about sexuality here and this and that, whatever. We talked about a little bit about Christianity. And my next note in terms of this section is love, justice, and living. I did not start with this, but I'll make it clear. Affairs are bad. Affairs are bad. Sleeping around, bad. Trying to have sex with everybody, bad. Within the fiction of the film, some of the moments are very funny. Some of the moments are melancholic. Some of the moments are embarrassing, sad. The film kind of explores all these things about sexuality that actually do just take place during normal sexuality. I mean, Kat and I have mentioned this before. I've mentioned it on the podcast. Sex is funny. That's okay. If all you're learning about sex is through pornography, you're learning about hairlessness and you're learning about stoicism. And that is not sex. Sex is intimate. It's fun. It's silly. It's explorative. So I like in the fiction of this film how it's kind of like every bad move Jeremy makes in pursuit of someone sexually kind of showcases a different faulty thing or natural thing or whatever about sexuality. That's not in my notes, but I just wanted to add that I think within the fiction, it's interesting. In real life, don't do it, guys. Not good. Not good.
And I think a very PG funny moment is when he is snuggling up to Martine. Or no, he's like, I'm scared. Can I sleep in your room tonight? And she's like, okay, sure, fine. And then he goes, can I snuggle with you? And she says, no, I think that's too soon. Mind you, her husband died literally a week ago.
And
I think it's too soon. Yes, and her son is missing, presumed maybe dead. And she's like, can we snuggle? No, I think it's too soon. And then he goes, well, can I hold your hand? And she says, okay, that's fine. And they hold hands and fall asleep.
And credits roll.
I think it's hilarious too, because it's also showing no, this is actually kind of a maternal relationship. This is not maybe both of them would desire each other in that way. And also I think it's a bad call to enable that and to seek it out in this way that is just unwise, total self-gratification
juvenile
sort of stuff, right?
It's juvenile.
Yes, stupid. But I also think it's hilarious because again, it's just this very maternal mommy, can I sleep in your bed? I had a nightmare. That's the equivalent that happens.
Yeah, and all of that to me is worthwhile in the film, in terms of okay, sure, show that to me. I find that funny. That's interesting. That's a good way of showing these weird ways in which our relationships to other people that are a little more than just platonic, I think is engaging. But for the thing I actually wrote for Love, Justice, and Living, which the movie kind of talks about too, in terms of the recurring motifs prompt still, there's this monologue in the middle. We've talked about the priest a couple times. His name is Labe. I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong. And he surmises Jeremy has killed Vincent, which is true. And he makes clear, actually, there's a great, literally the scene that makes the movie in the middle. And it's just so good. It's so clever. It's well put together, where essentially Jeremy is alone at the chapel, ruminating. Labe enters in his pastoral clothes into the chapel, walks past him, and he says to Jeremy, I have to do confession. And Jeremy's like, I'm not a pastor. He's like, it's okay. It's easy. And he puts him into where the pastor is supposed to go. And then Labe, the pastor, goes to where the confessional person goes. And Labe doesn't overtly say, I know you killed Vincent. He says, I am burdened with knowledge that somebody I love deeply has committed a murder. And it's very funny, but it's also very well constructed because it's so indirect, but it's also very obvious that the two know what they're talking about. But we also get a really interesting explanation of the kind of love that Labe has for Jeremy, which in the end, ultimately, as we learn more, is not a healthy love. But the things he says are very like romantic and like the kind of love that is like actually like a good love, where he says like just this, there's like a line that's like stuck in my head. It had to do with like learning to love those that you will never get the love back from, and kind of like carrying that. It's like unrequited, it's yearning, it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff. Like that is what, that's what I want from movies. And anyways, so he's then also sharing kind of like, in the end, he essentially makes clear like he has these suspicions. He's confident that Jeremy killed Vincent, but he is not going to say anything about it. And he adds these like philosophical reasons as opposed to just the fact that he loves him. He says like, look, a man's already dead, and putting Jeremy in jail wouldn't bring Vincent back. Part of jail time or punishment is to see someone change. Would Jeremy change if he suffered punishment, or has Jeremy already felt that change felt changed and ashamed, and thus is suffering in a kind of way? And to tie this in with my mushroom stuff, mushrooms are neither plants nor creatures, and thus they kind of live in this different way of the two normal modes that we're most accustomed to. Jeremy, Lottie, and those quote unquote in the know, if anyone ever did know, they're living differently than everyone else who is in this culture and community under a law and order. Beneath the surface, there's this secret kind of operating separately. And like, apart from the queer melancholia of it all, of these characters who, one who has an unrequited, care for another, there's also like this hope that then Jeremy would like live a better life because of the act that he's committed. Because he's committed this act and feels ashamed, there's this hope that Labe has for Jeremy, which is, because of what you've done, you now have to live better. Like, you can't not live better. There are undoubtedly Christian ideas in this. Obviously, these are not 100% fully Christian ideas, but the idea of shame and guilt propelling one to goodness is part of how God gets our attention through these experiences. We feel shame and guilt because we're made in God's image. So we have this understanding of justice. Like, we know, like, oh, this is wrong. Like, there's something wrong here. But also, God is a God of justice, and not merely just love, and not only just grace, and not just mercy. He is one full of wrath, who will bring justice upon those who are bitter and evil. And the government exists as a form of a goodness that exhibits some justice on the earth, even if it is transient and dependent on if the government is actually good, which we could all look outside and see sometimes it is not. As such, while the drama of it all is something I appreciate and really enjoy, the content therein is diluted. Vincent isn't missing. We know he's dead. We know Jeremy killed him. It's not a question. And while I wouldn't want like capital punishment for Jeremy, the right thing, of course, is he can't go unpunished. But it was a fight. And Vincent had fought him two other times. I think Vincent had instigated all three fights. And Vincent had drove Jeremy to a secluded area, verbally said, yeah, no one will notice we're here, and then started to attack Jeremy. So honestly, if it went to some kind of trial, there might be a way to get away with it. But Jeremy has also done so much to cover up. his crime.
I mean, maybe Jeremy could have started with, he did breaking and entering like 2 nights ago whenever he got up at 4 a.m, snuck into his mother's house, woke me up and said, don't you mess with my mom.
And then caressed my chest. Some real Cain and Abel stuff going on. Am I my brother's keeper type stuff. But
I think too, like, your thoughts on the priest, it is interesting because the movie opens up with the funeral for Vincent's dad, and the priest is preaching at the funeral, and he's like,
eulogy,
love, 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 love.
Oh, it's better than that. It's better.
No, it's well written. However, the focus is just on like the sharing of love across someone's life, and the love that they've provided to you. And the fact that like the dad, when he dies, he's a baker. So he's providing sustenance to his people. He's providing like warmth to the people in the community. So again, I'm not it is way better than just love, 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 love. However,
on that,
yeah, it's.
I wish I remembered those parts of the movie and wrote notes about it, but it was significant that he talks about. I mean, this is something that, I mean, even Jesus, when he's talking to the Sadducees about, like, it's not, I was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they are still alive. Here we have this priest eulogizing about how this man is still alive and is still actively doing things and still baking and this really does connect even with, like, later on, Jeremy is definitely going to jump off a cliff and Labe comes up and is like, don't do that. like that's not a good choice.
What were you thinking 5 minutes before you walked over to this cliff? You were probably thinking about, what do I have to live for so that I don't want to jump off this cliff?
Yeah. And it's like it's also a good moment. And there's this point in it where it's not even nihilism per se. It's sort of just like an acceptance of death in kind of I don't know. It's really interesting. And you can tell, listener, that I haven't written notes for this because I'm not as clear or focused. But in the New Testament, death has lost its sting for Christians. And so death kind of exists in this strange way for the Christian, where you pass on into new life, into eternal life. And it's really just something that probably is very painful, but it's not like, it is now not the worst thing that can happen. And I think it's interesting that Labe's monologue kind of is like he says something like, death is good. And obviously death is a curse against man from God, and anything that God does is good. And so there is a way to kind of understand that, like, yeah, death rids the world of evil, but like, it's just my thoughts are unfinished on this. It's just an interesting way to talk about death in this film. And when you have the mushroom stuff of, like, these spores, these things only can come to life because of something dying, providing the nutrients for it. That's all a really interesting thing to talk about in a movie like this.
We're calling that scene, I feel like the focus that I drew from it was more of the idea that, like, death is inevitable. We all have to die sometime.
Somebody has to die.
Yeah.
I think he says something like that because he doesn't say death is good, therefore Jeremy jump. He's like, Jeremy, I don't want you to jump. Like, you're alive, so keep living. Like, and if you are alive, keep living. But he does say something like, death is inevitable, like you said, and that, like, it has to happen. Like, it's really interesting.
Really, I think that's the whole of my thought, is the idea that, like, the death is inevitable. We all have to die sometime. And so it is this really interesting juxtaposition between, as we've mentioned multiple times now, Jeremy living through this death and being like a mushroom, profiting off of the nutrients of this dead man's body, literally, figuratively. And the idea of, but there's also a life to live ahead of this. And I think we, kind of dovetailing into the ending here, I don't think we get to see much of that, but the movie does make that clear. Like, Jeremy's still living.
Yeah, like a new life.
Yeah.
And obviously the Christian or the biblical imagery is, like, constant throughout the movie. I mean, that obviously is a very biblical concept of, Christ died and resurrected, and because he died and resurrected, we can live new life too.
Enjoying this episode? Grab that share link and tell your friends. Word of mouth is the most effective way for a podcast to reach new listeners, so don't be shy. Share the episode wherever you can.
I guess we can pivot to the ending. I mean, more overtly. Basically, we've been talking about it, but I'll just wrap it up real quick. Basically, there's this conversation. Jeremy's going to jump off. He doesn't. They wrap things up, essentially, because there were the police investigating and they believe Jeremy did it, but then things take place that then get the police off of their backs and more or less make it so that Jeremy now is in the clear as far as the film is concerned. And now it's just Labe and Jeremy dig up the body, and Labe it's an interesting scene. They go to the graveyard. It's the middle of the night, and Labe says, like, I'll take him back there. Don't come with me. This is something you shouldn't see. And like, it doesn't imply anything like wrong. It just implies sort of just like, this is a secret, sacred thing, I guess. It was very interesting. And he's like, Jeremy, just go home. Like, go back and get sleep. Like, go sleep. So he does. He goes, and that's when you have the scene where he is like, Martine, I'm scared. Can I sleep with you? Like, can I hold your hand? And it's just so silly. Like, and then the credits roll. Like, that's it. Like, everything's basically been resolved. Jeremy's free. The credits are abrupt. I mean, we both were like, oh, I guess it's over.
Oh,
Like,
it's over.
okay.
Yeah.
Just like the movie was lowercase in its attitude, so too is the ending. It just comes. And I wrote in my notes that I wasn't left to ponder much, but this episode clearly proves that wrong, as we've talked so much. And yeah, I think it's a decent drama. Again, that scene of the pastor carrying Vincent's body into the graveyard is very mysterious and interesting. It feels very spiritual. It's like very half alive, half dead. And like, I just find that interesting. Like, the pastor in general kind of seems like like this middle ground of someone who is fraternizing with life and fraternizing with death, as he's eulogizing during the burial of the dead, or he's aware of this murder and in making the decision not to say anything, essentially has Jeremy's life in his hands. I don't know. That's all some very interesting things to end the movie on. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't really read into the priest saying, Jeremy, don't follow me. You shouldn't see this as being something super like deep.
It's just interesting.
So my initial thought was the fact that he says, Jeremy, don't come back here. It's better that you don't see, is like, it's better that you don't see where I bury the body so that you have plausible deniability if the cops come back.
Interesting.
That's like at that point, it wasn't I didn't take it as being something where it's like, oh, this is a holy place. I took it as being, we're both deep in the lie now. We're both culpable now. We're both connected now.
Okay.
And yeah, so I mean, I guess I just took it a little more literally. But it is interesting because the imagery, again, of the priest being the one to bury the body, to bury them in the church, like graveyard, like a proper burial, not this weird forest where everything is slowly eating away at his body, turning into mushrooms. It'd be really funny if the last scene was just unmarked grave, mushrooms.
Yeah, that would be very Scarlet Letter.
But yeah, like I'm kind of with you. I feel like the movie ties its strings up, and I also don't think that like we don't get to see what's next. But I can assume that none of these characters are really going to feel comfortable. Like, Jeremy's a murderer.
Yeah.
The priest is like hiding a murderer, burying a dead body. And also he's like, this may be kind of a negative read, but I feel like he's extorting the information that he has against Jeremy to try and encourage a relationship with Jeremy.
Possible.
I read it more as like an extortion sort of thing, which doesn't feel good. And then like Martine, like, poor woman, husband's gone, son's gone. There's this guy who wants to become your son and your husband at the same time. Yeah, like it's interesting because like Jeremy's a baker, but we don't see him bake any bread. And the way the movie just ends abruptly, we don't know if like he's ever really going to provide life to others, if he's ever really going to give back to the community, if he's ever going to become like his boss who died at the beginning of the film. We don't get to see that. And we can only guess what's next, really. He got away with it, but what's next?
Yeah, and I think also like there is I'm saying romance in terms of a literary term. There is romance to the idea of the pastor having knowledge of Jeremy's crime and in being quote unquote merciful in not saying anything because he loves him so much. But Jeremy's crime was not against the pastor. Jeremy's crime was against Vincent, who is not alive anymore now. So he cannot represent himself in a case or court. And so the next available person would be that his crime was against Martine. And if Martin doesn't have knowledge of it, then Martin can't show misericordia, can't show the mercy or the grace or the forgiveness. This is, I think, also why, like, again, in the fiction, I enjoy all this. I like the sick, twisted, like kind of icky grotesqueness of it. It's all very interesting and worthwhile of conversation. But this is why, when we're aware of crimes within the country or around us, we take them seriously, because ultimately, too, these are crimes against society, because we cannot permit murder or manslaughter or types of killings or things that lead to death in that way. They're anti-cultural, they're anti-social, they're anti-relational, they're anti-human. like they lead to the death of humanity. And so at the end of it all, yeah, it's all flowery and romantic and interesting to hear. And the philosophy that's kind of being explored of like, would putting Jeremy away into a prison actually do any good if he's already so ashamed or afraid or scared or whatever, like, or vulnerable, really? Okay, interesting to talk about. But he still killed Vincent. He still killed him. So, like,
not only that, but I think, and I feel like maybe I was hanging on to this till too late in the episode.
It's okay. I held that on too.
not only that, but I think this goes back to one of my initial thoughts, which is the sexuality here feels super transactional. So even after Jeremy has killed Vincent, he then is also like coming up with these alibis and these stories and putting himself in precarious situations with Vincent's best friend, making it look like, oh, perhaps they're having a gay romance, or like, and having to come up with these lies and these things that, and he's very earnest in saying like, well, no, like, actually, maybe I would have been with you. But they don't end up doing anything together. However, Jeremy's like implicating this friend in his lies. And then he's implicating like the priest in his lies. And these things are used as tokens. And I think that's why at the end, to me, even, yeah, like the strings are all wrapped up here. But at the end of the day, Jeremy's not being authentic with Martine. And like, he and the priest have this shared secret, but also now there's this weird power dynamic of,
yes, that too.
I could ruin your life at any time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, is this real mercy, or is this something that's really just kind of a little twisted, and there's not going to be like an honesty, there's not going to be like a true goodness, forgiveness, justice, mercy, because nobody's able to be honest.
Yeah, Misericordia. This was fun. Like, as Catherine will say, and I like to tease her for it, I don't have anything to say on this one. Catherine had so much to say, and it was all good. And we both did, and I thought it was all very interesting. So it's an interesting conversation starter of a movie.
Hey there, listener. Want to influence the podcast? Head on over to patreon.com/cinematic doctrine and support the show for $3 a month. In doing so, you'll be able to vote on a movie poll that picks a film we discuss each month. So jump on over there and have your voice heard.
Let's do recommendations and get out of here. What do you got?
My recommendation for this episode is a show called Good News That You Might Have Missed with Sam Bentley. Specifically, I'm going to recommend for this episode the Good News in January Roundup. Sam does an excellent job of compiling some good news that happens on a monthly basis. It is no surprise that these are really challenging, weird, crazy times for many of us. And I know for myself, I'm not always mindful about what I'm listening to or watching when I'm washing the dishes or running at the gym, or, you know, any of these little moments that I have to just kind of put something on. Really, again, I am super, super tired of sad stories and morally dubious characters. And I'm also exhausted by the bad news in the real world media cycle and the morally dubious characters that are here in real life. Yeah, Sam's show really helps by giving really just like a quick 10 to 20 minutes where you can hear about all the good things that are happening and see how people are working together to care for each other and for the planet. One example is from the Good News in January. There is a study led by Stanford Medicine that suggested that this shingles vaccine may be guarding people from developing dementia later in life. There's additional studies that are probably going to have to be required for it. But this really could be a breakthrough and is something that, again, it would have been good news that I entirely missed. So don't miss your good news and check out the show.
I'm going to recommend, it's a soft recommend because I don't actually think this game is great, but it's interesting. And I previously recommended Amnesia, The Dark Descent, a great game. It's a really quintessential classic horror game. It had a semi-sequel, Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, which was licensed by Frictional Games, but produced by a Chinese Room, which is the studio that initially made the very popular Dear Esther mod for Half-Life. Dear Esther is essentially the kind of like considered the first walking simulator. It showed that like video games can be a bit more narrative focused and less game-ish. I personally don't actually like that kind of game. I had a time where I did like walking sims, but if I'm going to play a video game, I want to play a game. Amnesia Machine for Pigs is much more the walking sim side. It does have the good stuff of Amnesia, where it's got some weird Amnesia storytelling. It's got bizarre cosmic horror ideas. It has that historical fiction combined with science fiction stuff. And the atmosphere is pretty cool. Like, if you like Amnesia, you'll probably enjoy Machine for Pigs. But as someone who does not like Chinese Room games, here's why I don't think it's that great of a game. Because they make museums. It is a walking sim with maybe 3 to 4 encounters with monsters that you can't fight, which is normal for Amnesia stuff. You just have to run from them. The final encounter is pretty good. I wish the rest of the game had stuff like that. There's no puzzles. There's a lot of text to read, which is fine if you're familiar with Amnesia games. It's pretty normal. And frankly, it's not even the best of environmental storytelling that even Dark Descent had. And this is such a nitpick. But one of the things I like about PC games is physics and being able to pick things up and just throw them or do whatever. And in Amnesia, The Dark Descent, one of the things you can do, and it's inconsequential, you don't have to do this, but I find this fun where when you're being chased by the monster, you can close a door and you can barricade it by putting boxes and items and stacking them things. And pretty much every item in Dark Descent can be picked up and moved. Not everything's important or necessary, but it's all interesting to me that you can do that. I don't know who decided this for a Machine for Pigs. Every item except for key items is static, cannot be moved, which to me makes it even more boring to explore your game for things that I might need, because everything that I need can be interacted with, and everything that is unnecessary is stuck in its place. And I think that's so stupid. So anyways, I'm recommending it because it's an interesting experience and it's an Amnesia game. So you can probably suspect what my next recommendation will be for the next recording I do, as of, February 20th, because I don't know what's releasing the week after this one. Might be something I pre-recorded. But Amnesia Machine for Pigs, I'm sure if you get the Amnesia collection on PC or console, it already comes with it, so you can jump right into it after The Dark Descent. There you go.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed the episode, give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you're using. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe, too. We put out stuff like all the time. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that thumbs up and leave a comment. It helps the algorithm share our stuff around, and I see them, so I usually reply. Also, if you support on Patreon, you could have totally heard this episode early. There's a bunch of other benefits to supporting on Patreon, so head on over to patreon.com/cinematic doctrine to learn more. Speaking of Patreon, thank you so much to our Art House Theater tier Patreon supporters. Thanks, Thomas, Shirley-On, Mom, and Dad. Your support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool.
Sheriff, we got a lot to talk about.
Welcome to Twin Peaks. I'm your Twin Peaks veteran, Special Agent Matt Hanna.
And I'm your first-time viewer, Sheriff Hannah.
And each week, we're visiting David Lynch and Mark Frost's Twin Peaks on our new show, Welcome to Twin Peaks, a Twin Peaks rewatch podcast.
Entering the town of Twin Peaks.
We're talking dreams, damn fine coffee,
A damn fine cup of coffee.
back we're talking mysteries,
And asking the important questions like, Who really killed Laura Palmer? Are the owls what they seem? And why does this town feel like a nightmare you don't want to wake up from?
It is happening again.
Whether you're a longtime Twin Peaks resident or stepping into the Black Lodge for the very first time, Welcome to Twin Peaks is your guide through the woods.
What kind of fantastic trees have you got growing around here?
New episodes every week wherever you get podcasts.
And be sure to follow our socials at Welcome to Twin Peaks Podcast for schedules and opportunities to call and write into the show.
I'm gonna turn it upside down!
The mysteries are dense and the secrets are dark.
We'll see you in Twin Peaks with a fresh cup of coffee.